Kai kōrero o tēnei rā, nōku te honore, te tuku mihi atu kia kōrua tahi, Crystal Pekepo-Ratu, te tuahine, uti rā kia Tautoko Ratu hoki, e mihi ana kia koe te tuhukana, mihi atu ana kia koe, kia koutou te wā, whakamohio mai ko wai kōrua, nohia kōrua, hea te kaupapa o te rā nei.
Aotearoa, tēnā tātou. Tēnā koutou ngā kai mātakitaki, ngā kai whakarongo ki tēnei o ngā whakāturanga werero. E whakātu ana i tēnei o ngā ata. Miho ki ana kia koe e tā, e te parata, koutou o toi tangata e kōkiri nei i tēnei kaupapa. Hei koha, hara noa ki a ngai Māori, ki a ngai Pākehā, hoi, ki te ao whānui. Tēnei māua e noho nei ki roto ia o tāne, i te rohe o Kahungunu. So mihi ana kia koutou. A big mihi to you all. Welcome to our webinar. As I guess we try and give some of our learnings to you, and we look forward to some of the questions to help guide our kōrero as well. But big mihi to toi tangata who are progressing this great series of webinars, not only for us Māori, Pākehā and Aotearoa, but worldwide over. So looking forward to this next 30, 40, however long we're on for.
Kia ora kōrua.
A tēnā tātou, e mihi kawana kia koutou, ngā mātā waka o te motu. Ko Crystal Pekepo-Ratu ingoa, hiuri tēnei no Ngāti Kahungunu. Taho tōku pāpā no mangaia ia, ko Ngāti Vara, ko Ngāti Tāne, ko Ngāti Manaune, ngā iwi i reira, no reira ka nui te mihi atu kia koutou. Me koe hoki bro, e tā. Yeah, pretty humble to be sharing some of our experiences, and hopefully our little bit of pukinga may be able to support you in your venture around mārakai or mana motuhake within your own whānau and whare. Nā me. Che!
Ka pai. No reira kōrua, whakaro ana i roto i tēnei kaupapa o te rānei, ko mea mai koe te mana motuhake. So, how tēnei mea te mana motuhake i roto i te whānau Pekepo-Ratu?
Mana motuhake, what is it for us? I guess we like to talk about whakapapa in our te ao Māori, and there's a sense of whakapapa when it comes to mana motuhake, and that's, I guess, been instilled in us as tamariki, like you, Da. Those of us that went to kohanga or come through our Māori education systems, there's a sense of mana motuhake that grows within you. And of course, the experiences, the lived experiences as children, growing up alongside our grandparents. A lot of us are fortunate, some of us are less fortunate. For me personally, it's being with my grandparents in Kāwhia on the, like, not going to school and staying there for like 2 months. You know, they just keep me there, don't send me home and go back for half a term and back on the farm again, you know, in the garden. And those times there, living in the garden, living down in Aotea Harbour, Kāwhia Harbour, floundering, getting oysters, you know, mahinga kai is, I guess, where that love or where that urge for mana motuhake, that drive for it comes from. So I guess Crystal's lived the same experience as well, as I mentioned to her when we were discussing, you know, what is it about mana motuhake? Crystal has different lived experiences around, I guess, mahinga kai, around mana motuhake, and she can share her experiences, I guess.
I think when we kind of look at mana motuhake in its whole entirety, it's really about how we want to take ownership and live the life that is beneficial for ourselves. And so mana motuhake for, I guess, for myself personally, is taking all those lived experiences but applying it, because now I have a different type of partnership. You know, I'm with my husband who has his own lived experiences, so we have to compromise those lived experiences to ensure that our children get the fruits of our upbringing, I guess. And like Tautoko, I mean, the whare that we live here in Otane is my grandmother's, my mother's mother, and so we're really fortunate that there's a huge history in the whenua that we live on. My nan, she she was a really staunch gardener, and it's quite amazing because back in the days they used to bury their rubbish, and so when we dig up the whenua on the other side of our section, we find a lot of old rubbish. And I remember when we were doing the star compass and we were digging up the whenua, and Dad found all these shells. They were tuatua shells, eh? And those were the shells that he used to go across to Foxton, I think, to go and get some tuatua for my grandmother, for my nan. And so these were all the shells and the history that was buried within there. But also having my father and my uncles, so on my father's side, he's a Cook Island Māori. My grandparents, they came over to the islands. They never had, when they were very young, they were young teenagers to work here in Central Hawke's Bay. So there is quite a huge Cook Island population here in Central Hawke's Bay. And my grandfather, he was a seaman. And so that was instilled in my father and his brothers. And so that was another sense of mana motuhake, around looking after ourselves, our self-sovereignty and self-determination. And for us, I guess, as a husband and wife, as a partnership, it's bringing those experiences together to make something for our own tamariki.
Mm. Oh, well, mai te whakarongo ki era kōrero, ka rongo koina te kākāno ko puawai ki roto i a kōrua. So I think it's definitely those lived experiences that guide, I guess, all of us in the akoranga that we do apply in everyday practice. So with those lived experiences that you guys have talked about, what have been the key things that have made you get to the point where you decided this is how we're going to do things in our whare?
Like I guess all upbringings, anyone who throughout our upbringings, I guess, whilst growing up, we have influences in life, and they determine the actions that you'll take in the future, or help shape the actions you take and make in the future. And that's where it comes from. Our whakapapa to mahinga kai, through our parents, our grandparents, pretty much is that kākāno that's blossomed within us as parents. And it comes back to us being a big family now, 5 children, 1 more on the way. And it's, hey, we better get outside and get a Māora game, man. We better get to the beach. And so it's a bit of, there's a sense of need because of the size of our whānau, but also a sense of reconnecting to our grandparents or our parents, our family history, you know, the things that our families did to survive. We're taking those systems, those knowledge systems that they had, and reapplying them today and making sense of them in our world and feeding it to our tamariki, so that when it's their time to be parents, as I say to them, you're in the garden now learning, so that when you're older, you remember what to do. It'll come to you. It's all things, you know, we have these light bulb moments. So that's what we try and do with our tamariki.
I think he me pai tērā I te mea, I think it's really, really important for us to remember that our next generation are living in a very, very different aone. So the fact that we're able to do webinars and communicate mātauranga in a different way, but are still able to hold on to our tikanga in terms of how mātauranga is passed on through generations, I think it's a really, really important that we don't forget about that tūturu way of learning. So e mihi ana kia korua mō ngā whakaro e pāna ki tērā. I guess a lot of people have come here to see the fruits of what you guys have put together. So I guess this next part of our kōrero will be around the actual Māora component that you guys have actually sort of jumped into. So if you guys could sort of share and demonstrate a little bit about what's been happening in that space, might guide a bit more kōrero for us. Kia ora korua.
Well, Crystal's going to quickly bring up some images. We actually, just a bit of background about us. I'm from Waipawa, which is in Wellington, but brought up a lot in Kāwhia with my grandparents. So we have different environments here in Otane to Wellington to Kāwhia. Gardening in Wellington was like on a real miniature scale, so doing it in pots and like troughs about you know, the length of the computer screen or something. So we couldn't do much. But when coming back home, we thought, man, we got to get back into a Maara. So what you can see on screen is the Maara we created during the first stage of the COVID lockdown. We did have a Maara bed there, which is the one in the rows that you can see. It wasn't like that. We just reshaped it. So this is us working on our next Maara bed. Our koru, you'll see it take shape. So the
I
plan
just don't
is,
like straight lines. That was the plan. I was like, oh, you know, I think we need to remove, you know, move away from those straight lines there, Tautoko, and make use of our whenua and be a bit more creative. And being creative enables our tamariki also to really get stuck in. So this video that we're actually playing in terms of this time lapse, this is actually during the first COVID lockdown, and we just had heaps of seedlings, and because we had already planned that we wanted to do a winter Maara, and we'd never done a winter Maara before, and I guess that's part of some of the learnings around Maara is just to give things a go, and we kind of went on a bit of a big scale here, eh?
well, we we've been locked down for 6 weeks, so we said, why not? Let's just go and smash it out and kill some time. So we spent about 3 days, I think, doing the Maara, getting it all ready, planting it out, and tending to it throughout the lockdown. So as time's gone on, winter's passed, hopefully the kai will present itself soon in one of the videos. We've had time to sit in our Maara and look at it. We've got the rose, we've got the koru, we've got the niho taniwha shape. Now I've planned to do another garden bed with maybe a potama. And I'm looking at our Maara one day while I'm just out there tending to it. And I thought, well, I'm going to grow some fruit trees around it. There's a couple there you can see, which are miniature peacherines. We've got an apple tree just to the left of the screen. And I thought to Crystal, let's plant some more fruit trees to resemble a whare. They can be the power of our whare. The Maara and the kōrero within the Maara can be our whare wānanga, and we can wānanga about different kaupapa, whether the plants are there, whether they're not there, but it's a whare wānanga a Maara that we can produce for our tamariki and whoever else wants to participate.
Miharo.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a lengthy video, but those of you who are watching, some of these videos have been shared, or some of our kōrero, or Crystal's kōrero, should I say, has been shared on the Protect My Whakapapa Facebook page. You'll see some more of our mahi. But leading on to our, going back to our kaupapa of mana motuhake, this is us applying how we feel and what we think mana motuhake looks like for us. And everyone will have their view of what it looks like for you and how you apply it. And this is just our take on our mana motuhake and our small steps of plodding along to increasing, you know, if we were to put a gauge on mana motuhake, to increase our mana motuhake-ness.
Kia ora. Ka pai, ko puta etahi kōrero mai tēnei. So there's a few who have made mention that they love the fact that you've taken the straight lines away. Kia whakaaro rereke. I agree that that's, the person has stated that it's probably a way better way to engage our tamariki and our rangatahi into that space as well. I guess it would be awesome if you could talk us through that process of how you actually blueprinted the ideas in that space, and was there a level of leadership taken by your tamariki in that space? Yeah,
actually, funny you say that. The Maara with the, so prior to us, what you saw in the time-lapse video, our 15-year-old, he actually initiated the whole starting of the Maara. He started weeding the one with the straight lines, and he just started weeding it, and then we kind of really just got stuck in. So he made the initial step, and there was nothing planned, and so there was actually nothing planned. We just were going to do that Maara and then plant the kai, and then from there we realized we had so much more kai to stool to plant. And so from there, that night we all planned with the koru and the Ngāti Vara. And but I guess sometimes we have to let our tamariki lead, because we can do all these things like planting kai, and if it's not resonating with them, then sometimes you're wondering if it's even going to get through to them. And so when our big boy started that, there was a sense of satisfaction within himself that he initiated something for his whole whānau. And we followed on from that. And then from the rest of the mahi, we didn't force the kids to participate, but they just came and went when they felt like it. And that was okay for us, because koira te āhuatanga o ngā tamariki, they come and go when they please. And yeah, and I think when they started seeing the kai develop and grow, and they were able to harvest kai, you know, the whole excitement in their face was, yeah, you couldn't really compare, to be honest. But there was also other learnings within that space. So this was the kai that we had planted, but I needed to go to a particular here where Tautoko, because he's also a teacher as well, so he was able to actually integrate the Māora kai learning into the tamariki's numeracy and literacy and how they were going to plan. So this is Ngāvi here, and he actually designed his own little Māora. Do you want to talk to them about that?
Yeah, one of Ngāvi's, one of the school projects during COVID was to plant a winter garden, te kura kaupapa Māori o Takapo. So this is a shot of Ngāvi. I sat with him, we drew out his plan with some measurements, and this is him applying it. So measuring out the spacing between his cabbages, his red cabbages, going through planting them, watering them, tending to them throughout the season. I don't think we've got a shot of what they look like now, but they've just come through actually. The cabbages of the form we planted a few weeks into the COVID, the first stage of the COVID lockdown, so it had already started getting cold. So they took a bit to come through, but they've come through and it's great. A whole lot of bok choy as well, pak choy, some Asian greens in there. Yeah, so integrating the learnings, so curriculum or marautanga, whatever they are, literacy, numeracy, some sciences in there, some biology, some physics, some chemistry, with just enough for them to understand. And like Crystal said, the kids are in it, they're out of it, but as long as they are in it, when they are in it, we know that they'll learn, because it's like kapahaka. Those of us who've done kapahaka before, we see the kids running around. Next minute, they know the whole bracket before the whole team.
Totally. I think that's the unconscious learning that's going on within those tamariki, when you think that they're not paying attention, but really they're understanding everything that's happening, right? E whakaaro ana, ko puta e tai pātai. So we have a pātai. What is your whakaaro around te reo Māori and the whare with your tamariki in relation to mana motuhake?
O tēnā koutou me tērā tino pātai. I te mea, he mokopuna tuatahi ahu no te kohanga reo, te kaupapa te kohanga reo, ki roto kōkiri puke atua, ki te whanganui atara, e waiwhetu hoki, koera te aronga o tō mātou whānau, ko te ao Māori. Hare te mea, ka kōrero Māori, ia wā, ia rā, ki rō whare, ki waho whare, he oi, kei te kura kaupapa wa mātou tamariki, kei te kohanga reo wa mātou tamariki, he reo Māori e pāhoana ki roto i te whare, he reo Pākehā hoki e pāhoana i roto i te whare. He oi, ko te mea nui, mā te reo Māori ka e nei kōrero tuku iho, e nei mātauranga, ki roto i ngā tamariki, tōna wā, i ngā pake ki ake rātou, ka mato haere a rātou mahi. So that will be in abundance of what they do. So tēnā koutou who didn't understand what I will translate, I guess, some of it. So I grew up in Kohanga Reo, the first Kohanga Reo, and Crystal grew up in Kohanga Reo. we went to Te Aute College together, how we met. Our tamariki and kohanga reo kura kaupapa whare kura as well. So te ao Māori is our world, and te reo is used to convey or to enforce, I guess, our narratives and our traditional practices. Without te reo, it's harder to embed those practices and those learnings. So they go hand in hand. Tēnā koe me tērā pātai.
Tētahi anō. This is from an anonymous person. Awesome mahi, leadership for the tamariki, giving them the opportunity to initiate their own mahi. Where do you get your kai to plant from?
A lot of the kais we've saved seeds. So we've actually done, we didn't, this is not our first time that we've done Maara. I think
we lived here 10 years ago before we moved back to Wellington, and we started some gardens then of some, I remember planting some corn, some tomatoes, some broccolis and stuff. I think Crystal might have some photos here from that long ago, somewhere. Are those them? Yeah, that's them there. So Crystal's going to share a photo. This is one of the first gardens. We've got some spring onions in there, I think, along the front of the tomatoes, celery, red cabbages.
So back in 2010, we started, we grew some kai, and we grew it at the back of our whare, and so when we grew this kai, it was in abundance. It was amazing. We were quite stoked, because we were still kind of like, you know, and admittedly we were kind of greenhorns in terms of our own independency around growing kai. Even though we had the experiences with our grandparents, this was the time where we had to do it on our own. And but then there's so much to consider when deciding where you're going to plant your kai. There's watching how, you know, where the sun travels in your whare. So when we plant this photo that you see here, we realized that the fruit wasn't as good as what it would be in a space that had all day sun. And because this was like a half a day sun.
Yeah, we get about half to 3/4 of a day, depending on the time of the year, at the back of our house. We couldn't plant in the space where we are now, because we actually rented that half of our section out, and it was full of 20-foot containers. So our space at the back of the house was all we had, and you had limited sun. He oi. We still got some kai. So going back to the pātai about seeds, some of the seeds have been saved from this period. Some I have gathered from my auntie in Kawhia, who still holds my nan's seeds. So we got some riwai, some kānga from up there, some white corn, which is what my auntie called rua pūtahanga corn. Some of the other seeds we've sourced locally, and those that we don't have, we just go and buy some seedlings from one of the garden shops and plant out, and let those go to seed and let them fall, and then they regerminate themselves.
But we're really just trying to work harder in terms of the seed saving, because that kind of aligns with that mana motuhake around the whakapapa of the seed. And so, you know, hopefully when our tamariki are older and they leave home, they have a family, you know, we still have seeds from when they were tamariki. And, you know, so the narrative still lives on.
So just going off that corridor in terms of the seeds that have been stored for long periods of time, what is the correct way to store them? If whakaaro tāko, you know, is there a way? So if you were to think about whānau who are just starting this journey and not quite ready to get their māra together, but have got the seedlings or whatever it might be, if whakaaro tāko rua?
I ain't no expert, but I just watched I replicated what my nan did. She used to get all these seeds, put them on a tray, leave them in front of the window, let them dry out, and then put them into paper bags. So I just copied it.
How long did they last when you did that?
I've got some of them I actually can't say in terms of a time frame. Some of them, they will germinate. It's like a hit and miss in some seeds. Some of them will germinate, some of them won't. Once they germinate, you get a whole bunch of seeds from those as well. I've got some pōhata seeds from my nan that they must nearly be 15, 20 years old, and I haven't tried them yet, but this season, in the next few weeks, I'm going to try and see what happens with them once I plant them out.
Mo te ope kare mohio hea te pōhata?
Oh, sorry, pōhata is like a, I think, from what I gather, it's from the kale family. That's what it looks like. It looks like one of those broader leaf kales, but it's called pōhata. I know it's an introduced plant to Aotearoa, but on the west coast in Kāwhia, down in Taranaki as well, it just grows everywhere, a bit like wild turnip tops. But for boil-ups, it is the winner.
I think everyone's always looking for the way they can level up their boil-ups, aren't they? So there's all learning for today, fun. Ka pai, korua, tētahi kupu I rungo hoki au, rua pūtahanga?
Oh, ai, rua pūtahanga.
Katina.
Koia tētahi o ngā tūpuna roto I a Taranaki, ne? I roto I ngā kōrero I rongo tūrongo rāua ko whatihua mō tōna rerehua. So long story short is, rua pūtahanga from Aotearoa travelled up to Aotearoa to marry one of the brothers, to marry Tūrongo. Whatihua played a trick on his brother and ended up with her. Their marriage broke apart, she went back home, but rua pūtahanga was this beauty of blonde hair. And so this kānga that we have up in Kāwhia that is white corn is named rua pūtahanga, which is a personification. Yeah, it's a personification, I guess, ingoa of that tipuna. And it's a ingoa that was actually my first hearing and learning of it was our kuia Nani Nora Pikia, Nani Nora Tūwhāngai, which was my nanny's auntie. And we were always in the Māra, and that's where I first heard the name Te Kānga Rua Pūtahanga.
Miharo. Pai rawa. And, you know, koenei ngā mea kāre tino mōhio te iwi ne. So I think everyone has an inkling around different things around Māra, but these are the different kōrero that are, I think, are really important in terms of knowing when we think about whakapapa of our kai. So I mihi ana mō ngā kōrero ko takuha mai kōrua. We've had another pātai come through in and around your whakaaro. So Māori ora whānau, I haven't done a Māra, but I talk with our kids about talking or singing to our plants. Do you use any of that with your Māra?
Absolutely. They hear you. I roa rātou. Like, so every morning I will go to, or every time I do that, I'm like, oh, kia ora. But I think it's just having that relationship. And also, you know, I always remember Tautoko's nan, talking to the insects, talking to the kai, like, and I remember one time, I always remember this one time, there was the spider, and one of the kids was scared, and then she looked at it, and it was like they had this interaction going, and then she says, "Hari atu nai nei," and then it turned around and went away, and it was then that I realised that there's a really deep connection, you know, for us and our natural world, and it's just like our plants. And they always say, you know, I mean, our plants, our rākau, everything is a living thing. And when we think about te reo, there was the pātai around te reo and mana motuhake. There's a whakapapa to our reo, and our reo does come from the taia. And so talking to our plants, talking to our rākau, absolutely. I believe that when you talk to your plants, they feel loved. And when they're looking droopy, they're telling you, you're not loving me. No.
Ko rongo hoki au, ko kite hoki I etahi o ngā hononga ki ngā iwi taketake no ngā tōpito rereke ne. So thinking about, we had a connection and a trip to Hawaii and went to Waipawa in Maui. And te olelo Hawaii, te korero, you know, te reo o Hawaii, really, really important connection to the whenua pere kia ngai Māori. And I think with that, they had ope, they planned for ope to come in to Waiata 1 week, every week to come to Waiata to their massive Māra. Their Māra was huge. And they had all these processes and procedures in terms of where you would timata your Waiata and where the performance ends, because some of the Māra had been set up as kaitiaki, so they were the protectors of the wind for the inner rako and plants. So the Waiata wouldn't necessarily get through to there, so they had to make their way around the Māra to Waiata to, you know, to the Māra, and this is what allowed it to thrive. So they were really big on that connection and that. And ahakoa te reo ka rongo te whenua I tō aroha mona. So regardless of if you're going to kōrero Māori, kōrero Hawaii, kōrero Pākehā, the whenua will understand if it's coming from a place of true aroha. Ne. So within that, you're thinking around just your morning kia ora to the whenua ka rongo, you know. So I think that's also a connection to our whakaaro around te awa rongo mātāne, I roto I te Māra, he wāhi aio, he wāhi rongo mau tērā. So if you're in a state of anger, or, you know, those things you don't want to transition into your whenua. So I think it's kia whakaaro here ki ngā tikanga o Toi Ako Māra. I know some of our whānau who have decided you need to be in a state of aio before you make your way into the Māra, where some others are also thinking about the space of that's where they become in their aio moment or their wāhi rongo mau. Nō reira, mihi ana kia kōrua. What's your favourite song to sing to the whenua?
There's a few, but you know, I don't want to, you know,
Break out the Mariah.
I don't want any contracts coming at the moment. So, but you know, absolutely, bro. It is definitely a place of tau, and
I just want to add,
very therapeutic.
It can be very therapeutic, as we those of us who do a mahinga kai or mara kai. But also, you know, there's times there where you're there as a whānau and you're having a good time in the Māra, just like at the back peeling the spuds at the marae. You're having a good old chin wagon or waiata, and you know, it's a general all round good time. I just want to touch whanau. There was a video that I saw one time, but it takes me back to some of the learnings of my kuia with mahinga kai and mana motuhake. So the farm we have in Kāwhia, she planted this garden, or her and Koro planted this garden down in the back paddocks. No running water. No, we couldn't, and we were too poor to run a pipe that far down the back of the farm. So my nan used to cart water on the three-wheeler motorbike, dangerous as, down the side of this bank into Mea. But she'd cart water there every day. And she'd stand there with a watering can in between rows and sort of swing the jerry can, the watering can, so that the water sort of flings far and wide. That's what I saw. I then saw a video on Māori TV. And when I think back, it was Ruben Taupari up in the far north. When he was in the Māra doing Māra Kai. His kōrero, and it resonates with me because it's exactly what my nan was doing. Him and his whanaunga were watering their Māra, their huge Māra, the same way. And his kōrero was, we do this so that when the water flies, it catches the energy of the sun, it takes that energy in the droplet and it plants it in the plant or on the whenua. So it's sharing that energy. And quite frankly, it's not that we're too poor to run a hose line over to our garden, but that's just how we water our plants at the moment. Just keep carting water 20 litre buckets in. But it's time consuming, and when you got a 40-hour job, it's some days a must.
But you do, I think, you know, that's another learning for us is we have to be really conservative, especially when it comes to wai here in Kahungunu. We have a lot of droughts, and so the droughts will probably start around about now, because we hardly have any rain. So by December, you know, our awa is dry. And so we really have to conserve wai here. And so those are little different other systems that we are trying to consider in terms of how we plan.
Capture more water.
Save more water for our Māora. I mean, you know, it's to the point where every odd number is allowed to use the hose on every second day.
Yeah, we're not as bad as Auckland, but there's a big drought that happened here throughout the summer and right through to the start of winter, and our region really hasn't recovered. Not even the water levels have. So we're still in the save the water. And for us, looking forward to the next few summers, it's we've got some 1,000-litre water tanks that we'll planted around the place. We just need to get them full before the heat turns up.
But I think that's also the concern when we kind of look at it in more of a holistic way around pepeha. And, you know, when your awa or your waiu dries up, you know, kare taia, you know, can't sustain you anymore. And so, you know, those are the things in terms of what we're seeing, especially in the last couple of years that we've been home, that it doesn't just have an effect on the ability for us to survive, but also for us in our intrinsic connection to our whenua and our pepeha. Does that still exist? And so that's been a conversation that we've been having over the last couple of days, is when a particular
waterway dries out,
do you still use that in your pepeha? Because it can no longer sustain you. And so, yeah, so those are a lot of the conversations that we have outside, just as a whole, in terms of everything that's happening around our environment. And there's so many, you know, on another topic, there's so many knowledge systems that are available for us now, in terms of te ao Māori. And I think the most important aspect of it when it comes to mana motuhake is knowing your environment and knowing your whenua, you know, having that intimate relationship and understanding of your environment so that you can apply those knowledge systems to your whenua, to your environment, so that your tamariki, you know, I mean, our whenua used to be an old riverbed, and so we know that when we're doing our kai, there's a lot of gravel and stuff that we have to navigate. And we know that the wai down the road, which is the local stream, which is the Kaikoura, it's not a very well awa. So being able to get our wai from the creek is, you know, it's kind of not viable at the moment. So it's really understanding and interpreting your environmental location to really have beneficial hua on your whenua.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with that. Tautoko Ratu, he's big on the place-based learning, kaupapa. Tipu ake ia I waharoa, he whenua pai ki te tipu kai hoki, so it was well known for its ability to grow good kai and the soil being really good down there. Ko aha tini tera wahi he wahi miraka. So it's a dairy farming land now, cheese factories and other things down there. But he was really big on place-based learning. So te whakaro, te whakapapa, te whenua. So wherever you reside and wherever you're from are both meaningful connections that you need to understand. Nā runga I tērā, I think there's been a real jump in whānau, hapu and iwi looking to share a lot of that mātauranga with those who reside in their rohe as opposed to being from there. So I think we're very privileged and very fortunate, I think, as the young-ish Māori generation that's come through, to be able to continue to have those platforms of mātauranga to be able to access. So I totally agree with what you guys are saying. Tētahi pātai anō ko puta i te o ngā whānau. For those starting Māra, what would be the budget to start off for a whānau that would want to start, but have good variety and thinking about having raised gardens?
A budget, oh man, I honestly can't give a cost. How much for a punnet of, you can get like a 6-pack from the garden centres of veggies, or like if you get 3 of them, they usually do 3 for something like $10 or something. You can get, depending if you've got a trailer, you can go to a garden centre and get a bucket load of garden mix, which is a whole lot to start a Māra with. You could plant all those seedlings out in that one bucket and some more. So it's about $25 for a bucket load of garden mix. It's about $10 for some seedlings, e tahi tipu, which they're about there high. Dump that garden mix anywhere, put those seeds in there, water them, and they will grow. Some of the garden mixes that they make now, they're purposely mixed so that novices can just dump it there, put a plant in it, water it, and it'll grow. Just keep watering it, and it'll grow. It'll give you.
No excuses. No excuses then.
Really important. There's a couple of things to consider. I think it's really important to consider, like, to think about what you like eating, because the last thing you want to do is grow kai that you probably won't eat. And even if it was to start on a small scale with just pots, or a tyre, like tyres are good to grow kai in.
I don't like tyres, but they are good. But you know, little troughs. You know, you can grow some lettuces in them. You can grow tomatoes. You can grow your strawberries. Three lots of strawberries in a little pot. Now's a good time to get them out, provided the frost is ended in your area. We're still getting a bit of frost here in Hawke's Bay, so we can't plant them out yet. But yeah, round about now's a good time to plant them out. Simple whānau. Just grab some dirt, put the plant in it, and water it.
Yeah.
Water.
Understanding that, you know, for those that who feel that the whenua is not good. So our whenua is quite challenging as well because it's quite gravelly. So what we did was we did exactly what Tautoko said, and we just chucked a whole lot of garden mix on the whenua and just planted in there. And then
keep topping it up with compost and green matter.
I guess it's just believing that the kai will make the relationship with the whenua as you start nurturing it, and then it'll all just, I mean, now our whenua is pretty rich now because the garden soil that we got is now embedded with the whenua, and so it's quite it's taken a while, eh?
Yes, so just a word of advice, whānau. Have a look, dig a hole, just a spade, dig a square, have a look at the condition of the type of soil you have. If it's soil, ka pai. If it's quite clay underneath, then that garden mix is just go straight on top. Don't worry about digging that clay up, just go straight on top of it. Over time, it'll start mixing itself together with the whenua, and then the soil slowly will become richer and richer as you keep every season applying more compost to it.
But if you're thinking about a budget, you know, I guess it's up to you really. If you think about like a $50 budget, I mean, you're probably going to get a good medium-sized Māra for that price. And depending if you want to get seedlings or if you want to get seeds, if you're going to get seeds, it's probably best to start putting them down now so that they'll be ready by spring. And then that kai could possibly be ready by summer. Yeah.
So yeah, the budget's up to you. Like Crystal said, decide on what you want to plant, what you like eating. Don't use planting kai you don't like eating. Just a waste of everyone's time. But yeah, whānau, Google, give it a go. That's what Te Ao Māori is about, ne? It's about trial and error, and we keep learning from it, and then we improve the following season. With that, I want to lead into one of the other learnings that we're still on is māramatanga or māramataka, and its application in our lives. We've been on Crystal's been on a longer journey than I have, and we've had some wicked experiences, but in terms of mana motuhake and how that applies to our whānau, Crystal has, I guess, a little story about fertility, and that'll lead us on to, I guess, the visual that we've got of a kapehu that we developed as well at the end of lockdown, and then just a few weeks ago, we finally finished it.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, it's really hard to talk about māramataka really, because you know, we're still like in here in this space, still kind of really learning. And I mean, I looked at the moon yesterday and I was like, oh yeah, you look like a tamatea, ayo. And sometimes you just have to kind of believe in. I mean, it was a half moon, so I was like, oh yeah, I'm sure that's about a tamatea, ayo. But it's such a journey. And whenever, you know, like I'm in such awe of those that have really grown up with māramataka and live it and breathe it, and it's something that we really, really want to push. And there's heaps of different little pockets of spaces that I've tried to explore with māramataka. And then the one that's probably got the most hua out of it is the māramataka and fertility.
Hey, we're
still trying to get there, but even growing our kai is understanding when I mean, during the lockdown, when we went into lockdown and we did our mara, it was during the tamatea moons, and twice we have put kai down during the tamatea moons, and it's just been amazing. They've just grown like wow. So for us, that's something that we can kind of chuck in our little puka of knowledge, our little kete of knowledge, that, you know, when we plant kai during the tamatea moons here in Otani, we get some good kai. And now we kind of exploring around the stars. So I always remembered this kōrero back in 2012, I think it was, and I was watching Wakahuia, and Te Rangi Mātāmua was on back then, and he had this kōrero about rehua. And for those that don't know, rehua is a star that denotes summer, and he had this whakatauki, and it was rehua ki te rangi, tāne ki te whenua, tāne ki te rangi, rehua ki te whenua. And so tāne ki te rangi, rehua ki te whenua is winter, no is summer, and rehua ki te rangi, tāne ki te whenua is winter. And I always kind of was trying to interpret what that whakatauki meant, and he always said that rehua, during the summer, rehua is always ripening the fruit. And I remember one time when I was stargazing out at Paurere, at our local beach, and I remember rehua rising at, it was about 11 o'clock at night, and this was during summer. And I remember seeing rehua rising at 11 o'clock at night, and rehua sits in the scorpion tail thing. And, but I never forget it, the excitement where I understood what that whakatauki meant. And so rehua is a star that in the summer will actually rise during the night, because during the day, if we kind of look at our whetū that go around, during the day, rehua is beneath us, so ripening all the fruit, and then we'll rise at night. And from then on, we wanted to study more around whetū and understand more around the role of whetū and māra. And then in our okay, I will take this. In my randomness, I just says to Toko, look, shall we...
We were inspired by Aotearangi up in Napier, because we wanted something here in terms of Aotearangi that actually represented our environment in Otani, because we are different from Marine Parade along Napier, who has a coastline and a horizon. we've got maunga around us, and a fire station across from the road, as you can see.
But also it's understanding, just back to that quarter, it's also understanding where our stars rise in our immediate location, so that we can interpret and understand how we apply ourselves in terms of things that we do at home, or kai that we might plant during a certain time. And so yeah, in our randomness we decided that we wanted to be like Ātiarangi, and we wanted a kapehu too. So we did a bit of a series with Protect Our Whakapapa. So this is a series that we're just going to show you around the design of our kapehu. Ka pai?
Okay.
Morena tātou. So this is our last segment in regards to sharing our whānau journey with you all. I've always wanted to initiate a po just in a particular space on our section, and that po was to signify where our tamariki could see matariki. And here in Otani, we don't get to see matariki rise on the horizon, and our landmarks are actually our maunga of Kahuranaki and Kauahehe. And so we, at a particular time, we will actually get to see matariki rise above those maunga. And this year, to my randomness, I just thought, oh, actually, let's just go next level. Let's go next level and put up a kapehu, a star compass. The idea became more motivating to know that we had something here that the tamariki could actually navigate from. Role of Te Whanau Marama. Not so long ago, one of our tamariki asked us what the equinox was, and so we were explaining it to him. And he was kind of, oh, yeah, but this time he can actually see it. He can see and understand or interpret the whole story of Rākura or Tamanui Te Rā travelling between Hine Takurua and Hine Raumati. So yeah, so it was really motivating for us to do this project. Also, we knew that we had all the resources and the materials around our whare. We had the concrete, we all collect kohatu. One of the bros suggested to use sleepers for the 4 po. And we just happened to have had sleepers in our garden, in our Māra. And so this project pretty much costs nothing. As we were designing our kapehu, we kind of had this idea that we were going to put a bit of a fireplace in the middle, and that was going to be the whole idea that come matariki we can do a hautapu, and then come September then we can jam our lamb tails on there. But after continuous conversation and really thinking about what it is we did want to put in the middle of our kapehu, we decided to go with a mauri kohatu. This mauri kohatu signifies the continuation of Māori. We got this kohatu from the Mākaroro awa, and so we named this kohatu Mākaroro. And the Mākaroro awa was part of the Ruatani for them. It didn't end up happening. And so, because of that, kei te rere tonu te Māori or Mākaroro. So this is a real symbolic kohatu for us as a whānau, because kei te ora tonu te Māori o tō tātou kōrero tuku ho hoki. So that's what our Māori kohatu in the middle represents. Nō reira, me mihi ka tika kia koutou te whānau o skip tātou hoki ko te whānau o Protect Our Whakapapa. I hope you have enjoyed our taku kōrero over the last 4 weeks. Nō reira, ka nui te mihi atu kia tātou katoa, Māori ora.
Miharo. We had a few pata come through when you were going through that, but you've sort of answered a few of them that have come through, so all the star compass related ones. So pai tira.
forget the issues that...
Sorry.
Engari, e tahi pātai anō, I mua te mutunga o tēnei, ko tētahi, there's a, tēnā korua, he kaupapa tino miharo tēnei, o tira he kōrero miharo rawa tā korua. We want to try growing riwa and kumara e noho ana mātou I tamaki makaurau. He ata korua kōrero tohu tohu hei tīmata. We have a pretty cool but empty raised garden bed. Do you have any advice?
We did kumara, we did kumara.
Yeah, we did kumara for the first time a couple of years ago as a trial. We tried 2 planting techniques. One that I saw that they use up north where the stem comes up out of the ground.
Yeah.
And one where, I don't know if it's a Māori or a Pākehā way, where they use the runner and it runs along. We tried both techniques. I really can't say which one worked the best because we sort of got the same amount of kumara from each tipu, except to say that one was easier to harvest than the other. And it was the ones the tipu that we planted with when it killed up, they grew in a bunch together. So we didn't have to go looking for them, whereas the runners, they sort of grew out, so you sort of had to find them. That was one experience. The other, we planted a bit late in the year, so some of our, what do they call them, root crops, kumara were big, some were very small. And a person that I spoke to in Hamilton, a gardener up there, he said, well, sometimes it pays to put some rocks in there because it helps retain warmth in the ground, and it's good for the kumara like not just soil but a bit of rocks in there. I haven't tried putting the rocks in there, but that was his tip. He also mentioned try using the Aztec way of growing kumara, squash and corn within a cycle, and his tip was grow the squash, the beans first, the squash, and then the corn, because the corn are water thirsty. If you grow them first, they'll suck all the water and the beans and squash won't come through. More tātou riwai. I've got some our riwai seeds out now, just so they can get their shoots come through on them, so we can plant them out. I really don't have a tip on riwai, to be honest. Kare, I just dig a hole, make sure it's got enough food for the riwai. One riwai, and about a couple of hands apart, and put another riwai, and if the seeds are real small, I'll just put 2 there. Cover it up, and when the sprouts come through, I think the general rule of thumb is you cover it by about 1/3, so the shoot's still there, still collecting some sun, and the shoot will still keep growing, just keep piling it up. And after roughly, depending on the type of riwai you have, some don't take as long to mature, some about 50 to 60 days, some up to about 90 days, so 3 months. So you can grow them at different stages and then harvest them at different times of the year as well. Yeah, I'm no expert in growing them. Like you, like me, get in there, give it a go, and then assess it, take a note of it, and improve on it, I guess, next year, the following season.
There's a few more parts that I think we'll try and get through before we end our session. So one is I wanted to start a māramataka research with our manu and their life cycle. One in my rohe is tara iti, a fairy tern, critically endangered in Aotearoa. So I thought it would help to understand them more. Have you had any experience with our manu or other fauna and māramataka?
For us here in Otani, or the whole of our Taratea rohe, really, it's quite a desert. And when I say desert, we don't really have much bush remnant. And for us, because we do, we like to go out on different adventures, we have to travel quite a fair way, either east or west, to get to a ngahere, so that we can actually catch up with our manu friends.
I guess the short of the answer is here in Hawke's Bay, no, because we hardly see manu here. And I'm not saying there's no manu, just where we are in Otani, we are void of our native manu. We are so far away from any native bush. What also hinders us is just up the road from us is a massive tree nursery, and that's where all the manu go to. So unless they bypass this tree nursery that's got all this type of the manu, we don't get to see the manu. And different to living in Wellington, where there's a lot of manu in Wellington, because there's a lot of ngahere right around Wellington. So we got to observe manu on the daily in Wellington. Here, once, I've been here 2 years, been back here 2 years now, 2.5 years, and I've seen one kereru. We saw 3, 4, 5, half dozen kereru every day in Waipawa around Wellington. But in terms of answering your pātai e hoa, in relation to the māramataka, we don't have that experience aligning māramataka o kōrero tuku i hua around māramatanga and our manu.
We have considered, so other than our own kai, we are looking at the back section where we used to grow kai, is putting like a lot of rongoa Māori there. And I mean, you know, we don't make any rongoa Māori, but we also know that our rākau rongoa are good for our whenua as well. And so that we know that that's going to take a bit of a process, with the hope that it will actually bring some manu into our space. But we've seen one kereru that was way back in 2008, 2009. We have a lot of kōtare here. We've been seeing a lot of kōtare, and the
One place to help answer your pātai, I guess, from doing some research around our manu, because a lot of our manu are migratory birds as well. So it might pay to have a look into Te Moana Nui Ākiwa, Southeast Asia, where some of our birds migrate from. Even Northern America, I think there's one of our birds come from up those ways. So te rā pia, he kōrero tā rātou. They have a kōrero about the manu, and likewise in our narratives, we'll have kōrero about that manu. And of course, the māramatanga, or the māramataka, does have an effect on them, because it guides their, it determines when and where, when they leave and when they come back. So kei a koe te ratika.
Apoe, parawa. He pātai anō tā te tahi. What resources, books, pages, or people you learned how to measure and design the kāpihu to align accurately for your area?
Okay, whānau, might cost you, but okay, I'm going to tell you how this we knew this particular spot that we wanted to put the kāpihu, because it's a particular spot where we can stand and watch and view matariki rise. But now this is a big secret, whānau, so I hope you're going to keep it all a secret. You get a rākau and you get a string, and you measure it out, you put it in the middle, and then you go around, and that measures the diameter of your porofita. And we used a compass. So we actually used a magnetic compass to determine where, and because we already knew that where matariki rises in the northeast, from our particular section. So we just used the compass to measure out from the middle spot. Now, don't do what I did and move the rākau from the middle of the porofita. You've got to try and find the measurements again. So it's best to keep the rākau in the middle until you don't,
Go on,
another pātai, how do we use the kāpihu? So what we did was, you would have seen all the kōhatu in between. So, and that was just reading different kōrero around different star compasses along the Pacific. We're pretty fortunate, like my uncle is also, his name's Te Tini Pekepo, he lives in the Cook Islands, and he's also a navigator as well. So he's had different conversations with us about whetū over in Rarotonga. And so what we did was we just measured out the different rocks because they represent different kāinga. But we had these little small kōhatu.
White pebbles?
They were like little white pebbles that we embedded into the concrete to show our tamariki where the different stars rise from. So they would know that Puanga will rise just kind of south of the eastern mark and where Tautoru rises. Yeah, so I mean, to be honest, whānau, it was a random idea that came to my head, and that random idea ended up coming to life within a week. And sometimes we just go with our own intuition and our own innovation and trust in that. And I think that's something that
was our mana motuhake creation.
Yeah, you know, we really promote is if you have an idea, don't ever feel, I mean, for us, no one's going to come into my home and tell me that I did that wrong, because this is my whenua and this is my home. So, and I think that's something that we probably need to believe in within ourselves, is that something that you want to instill for your own whānau, believe in it and do it.
I guess that leads nicely into this next pātai. Kuia and kaumata are raised in a time where they didn't have this mātauranga. How do you think we could take this practice, your mahi in the Māra and the next level star compass, mahi back to the marae? How can we take our younger and older whānau with us, take it back to the marae? What's your budget? No.
Tika te rā pātai, some of our kaumātua, and I say it because I experienced this with kohanga reo, some of our kaumātua now, aroha mai whānau, are being less fortunate than our generation, because they grew up with reo and all that type of discipline that went on through school. And tika, ko ngaro e nei momo akoranga, e nei momo mātauranga ki roto i a rātou. However, on a marae, like all marae, our kaumātua need to whakamana and trust in our next generation to say, yes, implement a Māra, or implement whakatū, tētahi ohu, a little group of youth, and be our gardeners for our marae. I know, there's a patch of land over there, the marae will give you some money, you fellas do the mahi, feed the marae, feed the manahiri, feed the whānau. Go back to communal living in some way, even though it's in different environments and different settings. I can't give, I guess, a solution to that issue or to that problem, but that's my view on how I'd like our marae functioning and our people contributing to our marae and our manuhiri.
I think most importantly too, there's a couple of things. Sometimes your own home could be your marae, and sometimes it just takes us to apply ourselves first within our own whānau before we head off to the marae. And I think that's a real important message to get across. It's something that, you know, we really want to drive for our own whānau first. And then it's also determining who are the different, you know, who all hold the different pukenga within your own hapu, to allocate the different mahi within your marae. But yeah, I mean, that's a pretty...
Yeah, Crystal's right there in that sense, another angle, because that's something that my nan's whānau did in Kawhia. Our two whānau would grow kai, would rear pigs to send to tūranga wāwai for the kingitanga to help feed all the manuhiri. So it's not necessarily having to have the Māra done at the marae, but the whānau can contribute from their own Māra. It works hand in hand.
Right. Well, whānau, tuatahi e mihi atu ana kia kōrua, o tira kia koutou te whānau Pekepo-Ratu. E mihi hoki ana kia koutou ngā whānau kua tai mai ki te whakarongo, ki te wānanga, e pāna ki tēnei kaupapa. Wai Māori e mātou ki te whakarongo ki ngā kōrero kua puta. So, yeah, feeling very privileged and honoured to be able to host this platform for everyone. Kia mohio ai koutou, the kaupapa will be put up to the Toi Tangata website after a little while, so if anyone wants to come back to it and have another listen to some of the kōrero or share this with someone else, ka whiwhi koutou I tētahi momo arotake a muri, so there'll be some post communications come out that will go to each of you listeners with a chance to win some Toi Tangata prize packs as well. So get through and get that evaluation stuff sorted. O tira, e mihi atu ana kia kōrua, I tēnei wā ko te hihia nohi o te tuku mihi whakamutunga kia koutou, kia pai te rā, mihi ana mō ngā kōrero ko tākoha mai, kia ora tātou.
Tēnā koe e hoa, tēnā hoki koutou ngā kauwhakarongo. Mihi nui ana ki te kohanga reo o rongo mai, e whakarongo e mātakitaki mai ana. Tēnā koutou a maua tuahine. Ngā komuna hoki o roto i te whanganui ātara. Koutou hoki te whānau o toi tangata, koutou katoa. Tēnā rā tātou katoa. Kia pai, kia mauri ora, tēnā.
Ngā mihi koutou.